I got my revenge on my cheating wife, divorced her, and got the kids and ruined her life. So, this all kicked off a few years ago, and honestly, at the time, I thought I had a pretty decent life. We were your average suburban family, you know, the kind with 2 kids, a mortgage, and a dog. We were doing all right financially. I worked in IT. My wife, Emma, was working part-time at some local health clinic, and we had 2 kids, Amelia, who was 14 at the time, and Jack, who was 9. I thought we were happy. I mean, we had some issues, sure. Who doesn't after being together for 15 years? It felt like we were going through one of those rough patches people talk about, where you're both working long hours and the connection starts slipping a bit. Emma seemed stressed all the time, which wasn't unusual, but it was getting worse. I chalked it up to our son's developmental struggles. Jack was having a tough time in school, and we had meetings with teachers almost every week. Emma took it harder than me. She always had this thing where she'd internalize stuff more, you know? I figured that's what it was. Then, out of nowhere, she's on her phone a lot more than usual. Like, all the time. I'd see her sitting in the corner of the living room, tapping away like she was glued to it. If I asked her about it, she'd just shrug and say she was texting with her girlfriends. I didn't think much of it. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. I mean, why wouldn't I trust her? We'd been through a lot together, good and bad, and she'd never given me a reason not to. So I started trying to make things better between us. I figured, hey, maybe if I made more of an effort at home, we'd get out of this funk we were in. I started leaving work earlier when I could, helped out more with the kids and around the house, but nothing seemed to change. If anything, it felt like Emma was pulling away even more. After a few weeks of this, I started to notice little things. Like, when I'd come home early, she'd be kind of surprised to see me. Or, when we'd sit down for dinner, she'd keep her phone right next to her, always face down, which was weird because she never used to do that. I didn't know what was going on, but I figured maybe it was just the stress. Then, one day, I was charging up an old iPad for Jack to use. We'd stopped using it ages ago, but Jack needed something for school, so I thought I'd get it up and running again. When I turned it on, I noticed Emma's Facebook Messenger was still logged in. Now, I'm not the type of guy who goes snooping around, but the first message on the screen caught my eye. It wasn't from any of her girlfriends. It was from some guy named Adam. I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't pry, but something just felt off. The message wasn't super inappropriate, but it was weird. There was a lot of back and forth, some inside jokes I didn't get, and it just seemed personal. I scrolled up a bit and noticed that some of the conversation was missing, like gaps where she must have deleted parts of it. That's when my gut told me something was up. But I didn't lose it right then and there. I tried to stay calm, think it through. I made a mental note to keep an eye on things, just in case. Maybe it wasn't anything. Maybe it was harmless. But I wasn't going to jump to conclusions. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. The next day, Emma was sitting in the living room, on her phone, as usual. I casually grabbed the iPad and went to my office to check again. This time, I watched as new messages came in. Emma and Adam were making fun of me. They were talking about my flaws, stuff I was insecure about, things I had trusted Emma with over the years. It was all right there, out in the open. I felt sick. My heart dropped. I didn't know how to react. I wasn't even sure how to process it at first. Here I was, watching my wife trash talk me with some guy I didn't even know. They were laughing at me, making me the punchline. And to make things worse, there was definitely some flirty stuff going on. It wasn't outright sexting or anything, but there was a weird undertone to the whole conversation, especially when Emma started talking about our sex life. More specifically, how bad I was in bed. That hurt. Like, really hurt. I thought we were good in that department. At least that's what she always told me. I took a few screenshots of the messages, but didn't get everything. Emma was deleting parts of the conversation as it went, probably trying to cover her tracks, but I still got enough to know what was happening. I should have confronted her right then, but honestly, I couldn't do it. I wasn't ready for that. So I just sat in my office, staring at the screen, wondering what to do next. Over the next couple of weeks, I kept checking the iPad. Every time she'd be on her phone texting her girlfriends, I'd log in and see what was really going on. It only got worse. The messages became more and more flirty. Adam started dropping I love yous into the conversation, and Emma wasn't shutting it down. In fact, she was all in on it. The more I watched, the less I felt like the same person. It was like a slow-motion train wreck, and I couldn't look away. I knew there was no coming back from this. Eventually, I had to figure out what to do. I wasn't going to let this continue, but I also wasn't ready to blow up our whole life just yet. So I decided to get a lawyer. I wanted to know my options. I needed to know what I was up against if I decided to pull the trigger on this marriage. And that's when things started to get real. So after a few weeks of gathering all this information, I knew there was no way I could stay in this marriage. I mean, watching the woman you thought you'd be with for the rest of your life openly disrespect you like that, flirt with another guy, and then complain about you to him? Nah, I was done. But I wasn't just going to blow things up right away. I needed a plan, and I needed to make sure that whatever happened next, I'd come out of this as clean as possible. For the kids, for my sanity, and yeah, a bit for revenge too. I knew I had to play it smart, so the first thing I did was meet with a lawyer. I didn't know a whole lot about divorce laws, but I needed to find out what I was up against. I wasn't going to go in blind. The lawyer was helpful, laying everything out for me, step by step. Turns out, the fact that I had those screenshots could play in my favor, but it wasn't a slam dunk. Adultery doesn't always mean you automatically win in court, especially when it comes to custody of the kids, but it could help when it came to things like division of property or alimony. So I started planning. First things first, I needed to protect myself financially. I wasn't going to let Emma drain our accounts or take more than her fair share once things hit the fan. I started opening up new bank accounts, redirected my paycheck to go to my personal account instead of our joint one, and started pulling money out little by little. Not enough for her to notice right away, but enough so that when the time came, I'd be good to go. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at home. I didn't want her to suspect anything was going on. She was still spending all her time on the phone, texting Adam, thinking she had me completely fooled. And honestly, it worked in my favor. The more she thought I was clueless, the more careless she got. I wasn't snooping as much at this point. I already knew enough. Now it was just about timing. Then things escalated. One day, while I was checking the iPad, I saw something that made me stop cold. Emma and Adam were talking about him coming to visit her, not just for a quick meetup, but for a whole weekend. A romantic getaway at a fancy hotel in the city. They were planning to spend an entire weekend together, right under my nose. Emma told me she was planning a girls' spa weekend. I could barely keep a straight face when she brought it up. She acted like it was the perfect way for her to clear her head and come back refreshed so we could focus on our marriage. I played along, nodding, telling her it was a great idea. I even offered to take care of the kids while she was away. She had no clue I already knew everything. This was my chance. I knew exactly where they were going to be and when. I got back with my lawyer and had him draft up a separation agreement. It wasn't a divorce, not yet, but it outlined what would happen while we figured things out. Emma would move out, get weekend visitation with the kids, and no child support until the divorce was finalized. I wanted everything in place before I made my move. The next couple of weeks were torture. Every day, I had to act like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't seething inside. She would leave her phone lying around, texting away, all while I was right there, pretending not to notice. But I kept my cool. I had to. I needed everything to go down just right. Finally, the weekend arrived. She packed her bags, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "I love you." I almost laughed. She had no idea what was coming. As soon as she walked out the door, I went to the bank. I withdrew half of the money from our joint accounts. Fair is fair, right? I left her half, but I wasn't about to let her take more than that. I closed out our money market account and got a cashier's check for her half, just to be sure everything was by the book. Then, I went to Office Max and printed out 75 pages of screenshots. I wanted her to see everything. I wanted her to know that I knew. After all that, I wasn't about to sit around at home waiting. I didn't want to be there when she came back. So I decided to go straight to the hotel. I knew where they were staying and figured I'd catch them in the act. When I got to the hotel, I was nervous. I won't lie. My hands were shaking, but I walked right up to the front desk and asked if I could use the phone to call Adam's room. The front desk lady didn't even blink. She dialed the room number, and after a couple of rings, Adam picked up. "Hello?" he said, sounding confused. I kept my voice calm. "Hey, can you send Emma down to the lobby?" There was a pause. I don't know what you're talking about, man." I wasn't in the mood for games. "All right," I said. "Then I guess I'll just call your wife and ask her to come down here instead." That got his attention. I didn't actually know much about his wife, but I knew enough to bluff. There was some fumbling on the other end, and then I hung up. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and there she was, Emma, looking pale and flustered. She tried to act casual, but I could see the panic in her eyes. We sat down in the lobby, and she started with the excuses right away. "It's not what you think," she said. "I can explain." I cut her off. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "Everything I need to know is right here." I dropped the stack of screenshots on the table between us. Her face went white. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to get out of this. "I'm giving you one chance," I told her. If you move out immediately, I won't send these to our daughter, your parents, or everyone we know. But if you come back to the house, I'm sending these to everyone." Emma didn't even try to argue. She was too stunned. I handed her the cashier's check for half of our savings and the separation agreement. "This is more than fair considering what's going on," I said. "I'm going to need you to sign this and leave it at the house when you pick up your stuff." She didn't say much after that. She was on the verge of tears, but I didn't care. I'd made my point. I left the hotel feeling more in control than I had in weeks. It wasn't over yet, but the pieces were finally starting to fall into place. Update 1. So, after that whole showdown at the hotel, things at home got tense, to say the least. Emma didn't come back that night. I didn't expect her to, but it still felt weird knowing that this person I'd been living with for over a decade wasn't going to walk through that door anymore. The house was dead quiet when I got back, which I guess I should have been thankful for. No awkward conversations, no fake apologies, just silence. Over the weekend, Emma tried calling and texting me nonstop, probably looking for a way out of the mess she dug herself into. But I wasn't ready to deal with her just yet. I needed space to think things through, to figure out what was next for me and the kids. I kept the phone off most of the time, just letting her voice messages pile up. Every once in a while I'd check them, but it was all the same. "We need to talk." "I'm sorry. It's not what you think." But I already knew what it was, and I was done with hearing her excuses. By Monday afternoon, she'd finally accepted that I wasn't going to pick up, so she sent movers to the house to get her stuff. I had this huge knot in my stomach when they showed up. It felt real now, like everything we built together, gone just like that. But then, I remembered what she did, and I was able to keep my head straight. I didn't go out to watch them load up her stuff. Instead, I stayed in my office and let them do their thing. A little while later, she texted me saying she had signed the separation agreement and left it on the kitchen table. That's when it really hit me. It was done. She was gone. I took a deep breath, went into the kitchen, and there it was, her signature on the dotted line. I couldn't help but feel a weird mix of relief and sadness. I mean, yeah, I was angry and hurt, but there's something about the finality of it that just messes with your head. Everything we had, every memory, was now boiled down to this stupid piece of paper. We sat the kids down later that day to talk. It was the hardest conversation I think I've ever had. Amelia, my 14-year-old, was already going through that rebellious teenage phase, so she kind of just stared at us with that "I don't care" attitude. Jack, though, my 9-year-old, took it the hardest. He's always been more sensitive, so when we told him that mommy and daddy need some time apart, he immediately started tearing up. I felt like the worst person in the world sitting there watching their faces. But what else could I do? I wasn't going to drag them through some nasty, messy divorce. We kept the conversation simple, none of the details, just that we still loved them, and this wasn't their fault. You could see they didn't buy it, though. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. After that talk, things kind of shifted. Emma was gone, and I had the house to myself with the kids most of the time. At first, I wasn't sure how to handle it. I mean, going from 2 parents in the house to just me felt strange. But slowly, I got into a routine. The kids stayed with me during the week, and Emma had them on weekends. I didn't fight her on that. It gave me the space I needed to figure things out. A week after she moved out, Emma wanted to have the talk. You know, the kind where they want to try and fix things. I didn't want to meet up, but I also felt like I needed to hear her out. So we agreed to sit down and talk at a coffee shop nearby. It was awkward as hell seeing her again. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept much since everything went down, but I wasn't exactly about to feel sorry for her. She started with the usual apologies. She was sorry for what she did, sorry for lying, sorry for everything. And yeah, maybe a part of me wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. She didn't seem sorry when she was sending those texts to Adam. She didn't seem sorry when she was planning that spa weekend. Then, she dropped to her knees in the middle of the coffee shop. I'm not kidding. She actually got down on her knees and begged me for another chance. She was crying into my lap, saying she wanted her family back, that she'd do anything to fix it. People were staring, and I honestly didn't know how to react. I told her to get up because it was embarrassing, but she kept on pleading. Part of me wanted to stand up, walk out, and leave her there. But instead, I told her the only way I'd consider moving forward was if she set up marriage counseling on her own and did all the work. I made it clear I wasn't moving back in with her, but that for the kids' sake, I'd let her be involved. She seemed to grab onto that small shred of hope like it was a lifeline. So that's how things went for the next few months. Emma would come over to the house 3 nights a week to cook dinner for the kids, help them with their homework, and do their laundry. I stayed out of the way for the most part, not wanting to deal with her, but she'd always save me a plate of food like nothing had changed. It was weird. One minute she's texting some guy behind my back, and the next she's in my kitchen acting like she's still part of the family. I wasn't having it, though. I knew where things were headed, and I wasn't about to let her back in just because she was suddenly playing house again. We also went to counseling, which was honestly a waste of time. Emma would spend most of the sessions crying and trying to figure out why she did what she did, while I just sat there playing the victim. I didn't have any intention of fixing things. I just needed time. Time to establish myself as the primary parent and time to figure out what I wanted to do next. And here's the thing. I knew she was still holding on to hope that we'd get back together. That's the only reason she kept coming over, kept cooking for the kids, kept going to counseling. But in my head, I was already done. I was just playing the long game now. So, yeah, that's how things were. Emma trying to act like she was fixing everything, me pretending to be open to it, but in reality, I was already looking for the next move. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. Not this time. Update 2. So after a few months of going through the motions, I knew I had to start making some moves for myself. Emma was still coming over to the house 3 times a week, doing the whole perfect mom thing, but I wasn't buying it. She was trying hard to win me back, acting like we were just one big happy family again. But I knew better. I let her think she had a chance because, honestly, it made things easier for me. The kids were starting to adjust to the new normal, and I needed that to stay stable while I figured out my next steps. The counseling sessions were still happening, but they were pretty pointless. Emma spent most of them trying to convince me she was sorry, that she was working through her issues, but I wasn't there for that. I was there to bide my time, to get things in place. I wanted to establish myself as the primary parent, and to do that, I had to make sure the kids saw me as the reliable one. I wasn't about to throw all this away just to rush into something messy. I started seeing my own therapist too, which really helped me focus on what I wanted. It wasn't about fixing my marriage anymore. It was about making sure I could move forward without dragging the kids through more chaos. Emma was always trying to fix things on her end, but I was mentally checked out. The idea of staying together for the kids just didn't make sense anymore. I'd already seen enough to know that this wasn't salvageable. But here's the thing. I knew Emma still had hope. She kept trying to play nice, making dinner for the kids, cleaning the house, and acting like she could still be part of my life. I let her because it gave me time to get my ducks in a row. I had a plan now, and I needed to make sure it would work. One day I decided to leave some things out around the house for the kids to find. I wasn't sure if it was the right move, but I needed them to understand why things were happening the way they were. I left a couple of printed out articles on surviving infidelity on the kitchen counter. Nothing too obvious, but not hidden either. I also left a Google search open on our shared computer about how to handle a spouse's betrayal. It was subtle, but I knew they'd see it. Sure enough, a few days later, my daughter, Amelia, came to me in tears. She'd found one of the articles and connected the dots. I hadn't planned on her finding it that soon, but when she did, I knew I had to handle it carefully. I sat her down and told her the truth. Not all the details, but enough for her to understand that her mom had made a mistake, and that's why things were different now. I reassured her that it wasn't her fault, and I'd always be there for her, no matter what. It wasn't long before Amelia's attitude toward Emma changed completely. She used to be a typical teenager, giving both of us attitude and pushing boundaries. But after she found out what her mom had done, it was like a switch flipped. She stopped talking to Emma unless she absolutely had to, and when she did, it was usually just to yell or get into some kind of argument. I could see it crushed Emma, but I wasn't about to step in and defend her. She made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Jack, my son, wasn't as quick to pick up on things, but he followed Amelia's lead. He's always looked up to his sister, so when he saw her distance herself from their mom, he started doing the same. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was confused and hurt. I did my best to reassure him that everything would be okay, but I knew that no matter what I said, it wouldn't make it any easier for him. Watching your parents go through a separation is hard enough, but when you add betrayal into the mix, it just messes with a kid's head. A few months after that, we went to court for the custody arrangements. By this point, both kids were on my side. Amelia had made it clear she didn't want to live with Emma, and Jack, being the little shadow that he is, echoed her decision. I didn't pressure them. I wanted it to be their choice. But the way things had gone down, it wasn't surprising that they didn't want to spend much time with their mom. When it came time for them to make statements to the court, they both said they wanted to stay with me. Emma looked devastated, but what did she expect? The judge ended up awarding me primary custody of the kids, with Emma getting weekend visitation. It wasn't the worst outcome for her, but it was a win for me. I got to keep the house, And since I was working part-time at this point to take care of the kids, I was also awarded child support. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to make things a little easier on me financially. Now, with custody settled and the divorce moving forward, I felt like I had finally gotten some control back over my life. Emma was still holding on to the idea that we could fix things someday, but I knew that was never going to happen. I had everything I needed: the house, the kids, and my freedom. I didn't want her back, but I wasn't going to flat out tell her that yet. I let her believe there was still a glimmer of hope, because it kept her from making things messy. The weekends when she took the kids were strange at first. I didn't know what to do with myself. The house felt empty without them running around, and I wasn't used to having so much time alone. But I quickly realized that this was my time to reset, to focus on me. I didn't waste it. I'd been through a lot by that point, more than I ever thought I'd have to deal with. But I was finally starting to feel like I could breathe again. The divorce wasn't finalized yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. Emma still came over during the week to see the kids and keep up appearances, but the reality was that our marriage was over, and I was okay with that. Update 3. With the divorce finally moving forward, things started to settle down. I got in custody of the kids, Emma was paying child support, and I was living in the house. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the chaos of the last few months. The kids were adjusting too. Amelia still wasn't talking to Emma much, and Jack had kind of followed suit, but I didn't push them one way or the other. I wanted them to feel like they had some control over the situation. After all, they didn't ask for any of this. Emma, though, she was still holding on to this fantasy that we might get back together someday. I didn't say anything to burst her bubble. Letting her believe that there was a chance made things easier for me. She came over a few nights a week, still doing the mom thing, still trying to act like everything wasn't falling apart. And I let her, because the longer she thought she could fix things, the less drama I had to deal with. But in my mind, I was already done. I had no intention of getting back with her. Ever. I just needed to keep things calm until the divorce was finalized and everything was legally squared away. One day, a few weeks after the custody ruling, Emma came over to have one of our talks. She always wanted to talk, always trying to figure out where we went wrong, how we could fix things. I was tired of hearing it, but I went along with it for the sake of keeping the peace. She was crying again, seemed like she always was these days, and saying how sorry she was, how she wished she could take it all back. That's when she dropped the line that really got me. "I still love you," she said. "I know we can fix this if we just try." Now, in my head, I was already out the door. But something about the way she said it, like she actually believed we could go back to how things were, just hit me wrong. I didn't want to play this game anymore. I was done pretending. So I looked her in the eye and said, "I don't love you anymore." The room went dead silent. I could see the shock on her face. She wasn't expecting that, not at all. I guess I'd been playing the nice guy card a little too well. She thought I was still holding on to some hope, but I wasn't. Not even a little. "I'm sorry, Emma," I continued, "but you killed that part of me. There's no going back." For the first time since this whole mess started, I think she finally understood that it was really over. She didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't try to argue. She just sat there, staring at me like she couldn't believe what I'd just said. After a few minutes, she stood up and said, "Okay." Then she walked out the door without another word. I didn't expect it to go down like that, honestly. I figured there would be more of a fight, but I think she was just done. Like, hearing me say those words made her realize that whatever hope she had left was gone. Over the next few weeks, things started shifting. Emma stopped coming over as much. She'd still see the kids on weekends, but the midweek visits became less frequent. She wasn't trying as hard anymore, and I could tell she was finally letting go of the idea that we could fix things. Meanwhile, I was focused on building a new routine. I'd started working part-time, which gave me more time to be there for the kids and keep the house running smoothly. It wasn't easy, but it felt good to finally have some control over my life again. The chaos that had been swirling around for months was starting to fade, and I could breathe a little easier. One night, Amelia came to me with tears in her eyes. She had just gotten off the phone with her mom, and I could tell something was bothering her. I asked her what was up, and after a long pause, she finally said, "Mom wants to know why you won't forgive her." I wasn't sure how to answer that at first. Amelia was old enough to understand some of what had happened, but I didn't want to drag her into the messy details. So I just told her the truth, as simply as I could. "Sometimes people make mistakes that you just can't forgive," I said. "Your mom did something that hurt me really bad, and it's not something I can just get over. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you, and it doesn't mean she's a bad person. We just can't be together anymore." Amelia nodded, but I could tell she was still struggling with it. I didn't push her to talk more, though. I knew she'd come to terms with it in her own time. Jack was handling things a little better. He was more focused on school and his friends than the drama between me and Emma, which was probably for the best. As the weeks went by, Emma and I communicated less and less. Everything was starting to feel more normal, at least as normal as it could be under the circumstances. The divorce was nearly finalized, and once that was done, I knew we'd both be able to move on. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from Emma. It wasn't the usual "we need to talk" text. It was short and to the point. "I'm filing the papers today." And just like that, it was done. The divorce was official, and I felt this strange mix of relief and sadness. I mean, I was glad it was over, but at the same time, there was a part of me that was mourning the loss of what we had. It wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a life I'd built with someone I thought I'd spend forever with. But now, that life was gone, and I had to figure out what came next. In the end, things worked out the way they needed to. The kids were with me, the house was mine, and I had a fresh start ahead of me. Emma and I would still have to co-parent, but at least now we could do it without the weight of our broken relationship hanging over us. I'm not going to say it was easy. Divorce never is. But sometimes, you have to let go of the past to build something better for yourself and your kids. And that's what I was planning to do. So, after the divorce was officially finalized, things started looking up for me. I got the house, the kids, and my life back on track. I wasn't expecting things to turn out this good for me, to be honest. I thought it was going to be messy for years, but it wasn't. The kids were happy, we had our routine, and I felt like I finally had my feet back on solid ground. Emma, though? Things took a turn for the worse on her end, and I can't say I felt bad about it. She ended up moving into this tiny apartment, way smaller than our house, and she was struggling to keep up with the bills. That fancy lifestyle she had with me? Gone. The weekends when she had the kids, they hated being at her place. They complained about how cramped it was, how she couldn't afford to take them out anywhere, and how boring it was compared to when they were with me. At first, she tried to make it seem like everything was fine, like she was getting by, but the cracks started showing real quick. She couldn't handle the pressure. The kids started pulling away from her more and more, and every time she had them for the weekend, they'd come back telling me how miserable they were over there. I never badmouthed her in front of them, but I wasn't about to sugarcoat things either. They saw the difference themselves. Then word got out about what happened. Turns out some people at her job found out about her affair with Adam, and it didn't go over well. The clinic where she worked had a reputation to uphold, and Emma being caught up in all that drama didn't fit with the image they wanted to present. She wasn't fired outright, but she was encouraged to leave, and she ended up having to find a lower-paying job elsewhere. That fancy part-time gig she used to brag about? Gone. Now she was stuck working long hours, and it still wasn't enough to keep her afloat. Meanwhile, I had more time with the kids, more time to focus on my life, and yeah, more freedom too. On the weekends when they were with Emma, I did my own thing. I started dating again, not seriously at first, but it was nice to get out there. And let me tell you, I wasn't struggling to meet people. I kept things low-key for the kids, but I was enjoying my newfound freedom. Emma, though, she was still stuck in that tiny apartment, barely making ends meet. She tried reaching out to me a few times, asking for help, hinting at wanting to talk again, but I wasn't interested. I'd already moved on. I'd won the custody battle, kept the house, and even managed to get my career on a better track. Emma was just a memory now, one I wasn't too keen on revisiting. In the end, it worked out better for me than I ever could have imagined. I had the life I wanted, and Emma was left to deal with the mess she created. Parents kicked me out during high school because of nasty rumor that was never true. But years later, they see me on TV and call me with their demands. Growing up, it wasn't hard to see that my twin brother and I were on two completely different paths, at least according to my parents. Their constant comparisons started as soon as we were old enough to walk and talk. He was always the golden child, destined for great things, while I was pegged as the black sheep from the get-go. Honestly, it was because I preferred shooting hoops or scouting the neighborhood for new friends over sitting inside and studying all day. Every year, our birthday highlighted the stark difference in how we were treated. It was supposed to be our day, yeah, our day, since we shared it. But it always turned out to be more about him than about us as a unit. By our 7th birthday, the pattern was glaringly obvious. He would have these blowout parties with all the bells and whistles, magic shows, bounce houses, and his friends running riot through our backyard and house, fueled by sugar and the kind of wild energy only second graders possess. Then there was me. My side of the party, if you could even call it that. consisted of a small cake, usually just a store-bought one with my name hastily piped on in icing that was a slightly different color than my brother's. I could have friends over, sure, but it was never the same. No sleepovers, no special outings, just a couple of hours in the backyard, often overshadowed by the louder, more exciting half of the celebration happening simultaneously. This wasn't just limited to birthdays, it extended to every aspect of our lives. When he brought home a trophy from some academic competition, the house was filled with cheers. My trophies from sports were met with a smile and a quick, "That's nice," before they went back to discussing his achievements. The favoritism was crystal clear, and it didn't get any better as we got older. I remember one particularly glaring instance when we both ended up in the school spelling bee. I was out on the second round. Nobody's perfect, right? But he made it to the final rounds, eventually clinching third place. You would have thought he won a Nobel Prize the way our parents went on about it. They threw him a little celebration dinner, invited relatives to boast about his intellectual prowess. Me? I got a pat on the back and a better luck next time. And it's not like I didn't try to win their approval. I did well in school, not always top of the class, but I held my own. I played sports, had a good group of friends, and stayed out of trouble. But it never seemed to be enough. No matter what I achieved, it felt like I was invisible unless I was being directly compared to my brother, which always ended in my shortcomings being highlighted. One particular memory that sticks out was from our 9th birthday. While planning the event, I overheard my mom on the phone with a friend, laughing as she explained how they were throwing a big bash for him and just a small get-together for me because that's all she really needs. It was like a punch to the gut, realizing how deeply ingrained their views were. The day of the party was as expected. His side of the party was a spectacle. There was a clown, a magician, and even a mini petting zoo. The laughter and screams of excitement from his friends echoed through our house, a constant reminder of the disparity between us. My party was relegated to the corner of our living room, a few balloons tied to my chair, and a quiet gathering of my closest friends who seemed just as uncomfortable with the situation as I was. As the years passed, this blatant favoritism slowly but surely started to feel more like emotional abuse. They weren't just indifferent to my achievements or interests, they actively put them down. I loved sports, always had a knack for them, but my parents saw them as a distraction. They would ridicule my practices and games, claiming they were a waste of time that could be better spent on academics, like my brother. I remember one evening, coming home excited after winning a regional basketball tournament. I rushed in, trophy in hand, ready to share the news, hoping just this once they'd see me. The cold reception I received was heart-shattering. My dad barely looked up from his newspaper, and my mom offered a half-hearted congratulations before quickly shifting the conversation back to my brother's upcoming science fair. Their criticism wasn't just limited to what I did, but also who I was. They'd make offhand comments about my friends, my style of dress, even the music I listened to. Nothing was off limits. It was like living under a microscope, except every observation was skewed to highlight my flaws and elevate my brother's virtues. The only person who ever seemed to see me for me was my grandmother. She was my saving grace during those turbulent years. Whenever she visited, it was like a breath of fresh air amidst the stifling atmosphere of my home life. She'd bring me my favorite chocolates and sneak me a little money, telling me to spend it on something fun just for you. Her visits were the highlights of my childhood, the moments I felt valued and genuinely loved. But as we entered our teenage years, even my grandmother's visits couldn't shield me from the increasing hostility at home. It was clear I was nothing more than the other child, the one who lived in the shadow of a brother who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Reflecting on those days now, it's almost surreal to think about how different our lives were under the same roof. We were twins, born just minutes apart, but in our parents' eyes, we might as well have been from different planets. It's a strange thing, feeling like an outsider in your own home, a guest at your own party. But that was my reality, a reality I lived every day until I finally got the chance to leave and find my place in the world, away from the shadows and the cold comparisons. It was my sophomore year of high school, a time when just about everyone was getting into social media. It seemed like overnight, apps like Snapchat became the new way to keep up with friends, share bits of your day, and just stay connected. Everyone was on it, everyone including me, albeit secretly. You see, my parents had a laundry list of rules about what I could and couldn't do, and social media was a definite no-go in their book. This rule felt particularly suffocating. It wasn't just about not having social media, it was about being cut off from my peers, isolated from the conversations that continued after school hours. While my brother freely surfed the web, chatting with friends and even playing online games, I had to sneak around to download Snapchat, the one app I thought could be my little window to freedom. One Tuesday, everything blew up over this app. It was just a regular school day, nothing out of the ordinary. I went to classes, laughed with friends, and participated in track practice after school. Little did I know, my secret use of Snapchat was about to turn my already rocky home life upside down. I got home that evening, phone tucked securely in my pocket, thinking I'd scroll through some messages before starting on homework. My brother was in the living room, as usual, glued to his laptop. My parents were still at work, which typically gave me a little breathing room. I headed to my room, tossed my backpack on the bed, and pulled out my phone to catch up on what I'd missed. That's when my mom came home early. Not just a little early, really early. I didn't even hear her car pull up over the music I was playing. The next thing I knew, my door flew open, and there she stood, staring at me, holding my phone. Her expression shifted from surprise to anger in a split second when she saw me freeze, guilty as charged, with Snapchat open right in front of me. "What is that?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the music. I tried to explain, to tell her it was just Snapchat, that it wasn't a big deal. But as far as she was concerned, it was a huge deal, a direct violation of their trust and rules. My explanations fell on deaf ears. She snatched the phone from my hands and began scrolling through my chats and pictures, her anger mounting with every swipe. "This is exactly what we warned you about," she hissed, glaring at me as if I'd committed some serious crime. "You can't be trusted. You just can't." Before I knew it, my dad was home too. He was less explosive but more disappointed, which in some ways felt worse. They stood in my room, my mom ranting about how social media was corrupting me, how I was throwing away my future for some silly app. My dad nodded along, chiming in with his own stern warnings about privacy and how I was exposing myself to dangers online. The whole situation escalated quickly. My mom, still fuming, started tossing my room. She threw my books off my desk, yanked posters from the wall, and dumped out my drawers. My little sanctuary, my tiny slice of personal space, was being torn apart before my eyes. My protests were drowned out by her continued ranting about trust and rules. Then came the real kicker. They decided that since I had breached their trust so flagrantly, I didn't deserve privacy. My dad, with a grim face, removed the door from its hinges right then and there. "Privacy is a privilege," he declared, the door clattering to the floor with a thud that echoed my sinking heart. "If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't need doors," my mom added, as if that made any sense at all. Left with no door, my room exposed, I felt more vulnerable and violated than I had over any Snapchat message. My space wasn't mine anymore. It was just another area of the house, open for their scrutiny. My brother, curious about the commotion, had wandered in by this point. Instead of maybe siding with me or even staying neutral, he saw an opportunity. With our parents already convinced I was the problem child, he added his own twist to the tale, claiming he'd seen me talking to boys online, making it sound sinister and secretive. "That's not true," I shot back, but the damage was done. His words only fueled their fire. In the end, my phone was confiscated indefinitely, my room left in disarray, and my brother left the scene with a smug look that told me he felt he'd secured his spot as the golden child even more firmly. That night, I lay in my bed, staring at the open doorway, feeling a mix of anger, helplessness, and betrayal. My own twin had thrown me under the bus to keep himself in good standing, while my parents had stripped me of my privacy and dignity over an app my friends used every day without a second thought. As I lay there, it became painfully clear that the rules were different for me. Always had been. My brother was allowed freedoms I could only dream of, while I was punished for the smallest infractions. It wasn't just about Snapchat or privacy. It was about control, and I was losing the battle for my independence within my own home. That night marked a turning point for me. Lying in the darkness, the gap where my door used to be a stark reminder of my lack of autonomy, I promised myself that one day I'd make a life for myself outside these walls. A life where I could make my own rules, live without constant surveillance, and never have to justify my desire for a little privacy. The toxic environment created by our parents' unjust actions allowed him to exploit the situation to his advantage. He adopted a pattern of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I never did, so that he could get away with everything. If he stole something, he effortlessly shifted the blame to me and my parents, already inclined to believe the worst about me, readily accepted his lies. He would demean me in front of my friends at school and would make fun of my appearance. Despite this, I had a wide circle of friends at school because I was approachable and open to making connections. My twin, however, struggled socially, and he started to resent that. I could talk to people while he, as an introvert, felt awkward. This jealousy reached a boiling point during our 14th birthday party when no one showed up for him on his birthday. I have no idea why his friends did that to him, But in stark contrast, my friends took me out for ice cream, and I had an overall wonderful day. This infuriated my brother. Further, to take revenge, my brother began to spread false rumors at school about me, where he would portray me as a spoiled brat. He would falsely tell everyone that I was allegedly physically abusing him at home, since our parents loved him more. Unbeknownst to me, he took things to a disturbing level to fabricate evidence. He would punch himself, purposefully inflicting injuries like a black eye or bruise showed up. The next day, he would confidently walk into school displaying the self-inflicted injuries as proof of my supposed violence and make up stories. Whenever our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would lie, saying that it was due to innocent activities like playing football with his friends' lies, and his alleged black eyes started to gain traction, and people began to believe his distorted version of events. It wasn't long before whispers started circulating, and even my friends began to look at me with suspicion. At first, I noticed subtle changes. Friends who once chatted with me in the hallway suddenly became distant. Invitations to group hangouts became fewer and farther between. It was like a switch had been flipped, and people were hesitant to associate with the spoiled girl accused of violence. One day, I mustered the courage to ask my ex-best friend why things had changed between us. She opened up about how my twin brother had been spreading rumors about me. She revealed the detailed lies he had told everyone, accusing me of things I have never done. I was shocked to hear her words. The feeling was a mix of disbelief and betrayal, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, someone I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I would never even dream of doing. It was a betrayal that cut deep, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a heavy heart. I confronted my brother that day after our school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he smirked at me and told me that I deserved to be alone. I was at a loss for words because his lies and behavior was starting to scare me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was afraid that they would believe my brother over me to isolation stung, especially because I had always been open to making friends. It felt like my brother's jealousy fueled lies or tearing down the connections I had built over the years. Teach us to began to catch wind of the rumors. It was a surreal experience, as if I were living in a parallel reality where my true self was overshadowed by the malicious stories spun by my own twin. The lies had grown beyond me, a teenage gossip. They were now shaping how people truly perceived me. The nasty rumor quickly reached my principal's ears, and then my worst nightmare came true. The principal immediately called me and my brother into his room, as well as our parents, so we could discuss these alleged rumors. I sat there, heart pounding, as the principal demanded the truth. I hoped my brother would finally come clean, but instead he doubled down on the lies. He straight up told the principal that, yeah, the rumors were true, and painted me as this bully who went around beating him up when our parents weren't around. I couldn't believe it. Shock washed over me as my brother continued, spinning this twisted story about how I was angry at him for getting more love from our parents. It was all a bunch of lies, but he stuck to his story like glue. My mom began to cry, hearing my brother's story, holding on to my brother like he was some kind of hero. My dad tried to comfort my brother, telling him that it was brave for him to speak up and that he was not going to make sure that nothing would ever happen to him after that day. I tried to defend myself, pleading with the principal that it was all made up. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to swim to the surface. But my brother kept at it, insisting that I was this angry, violent person, taking out my frustrations on him every day. My mom's tears kept coming as she held on to my brother, giving me accusing looks. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's made-up story. My principal reprimanded me strongly, saying the school didn't tolerate bullying and these were grounds to suspend me. I pleaded with him not to suspend me, but he shook his head, saying he couldn't just let it slide. I begged him, tears streaming down my face, trying to tell him that I didn't do anything to my brother. The principal firmly told me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others see this as an example to never bully anyone. It hit me hard, and I started crying even more, practically begging him to reconsider. My parents, angry and embarrassed by the whole situation, dragged me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to plead my case and make them understand, but they were having none of it. We left the school, my heart heavy with frustration and humiliation. When we got home, things took a drastic turn. My dad started packing my stuff out of the blue. I was shocked, confused, and had no idea what was happening. My mom asked him what he was doing, but he just shouted that he couldn't let me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying practically on my knees and pleading with my brother to tell them the truth, but he stayed cold, unmoved by my emotions. My dad continued packing my things and then threw the suitcase into our foyer. I clung to my dad's legs, still begging him not to throw me out. It was like a nightmare unfolding. He told me that a bully like me didn't deserve to live in his house, and that he would ask his mother, my grandmother, to come and pick me up if she wanted to do that. It felt like the world had crumbled beneath me. I stood there in shock, surrounded by my belongings, scattered in the foyer, kicked out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother did show up. She gathered all my things and helped me place them in the car, helping me into the passenger seat. She made sure I had my seatbelt on before walking towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my dad opened the door, she started to yell at him for treating me this way. With stern determination, she warned him that if he ever approached me or tried to contact me again, she wouldn't hesitate to involve the police or the CPS, since what he had done to a child like me could potentially wind up with him in jail. My mother, attempting to deflect blame, told her that it was my fault. However, my grandmother wasn't having any of that. She stood her ground defending me, emphasizing that I was just a child who didn't deserve to be treated in such a heartless manner. That was the first time in my life I felt how powerful my grandmother was. She didn't cower down to my parents, and unlike what they believed, she trusted me. Eventually, we drove away, leaving behind my home, the only place I had ever grown up in. I can't even begin to put into words how indescribable the pain I felt during that time. I remember just crying on the bed and not eating anything, despite how much my grandmother urged me to. I told her what my brother had done, and she was shocked as well. She assured me that she believed my side of the story, and I was happy that I at least had one person who had my back. When the 10 days of suspension lifted, the prospect of returning to school felt like stepping back into a lion's den. As I entered the familiar hallways, the faces of my classmates spoke volumes, judgment, whispers, sidelong glances. The weight of the false accusations continued to linger in the air. Meanwhile, my brother blatantly ignored me and acted like I didn't exist. He had become friends with a few people who believed his side of the story and saw him as the victim of my attacks. No matter how much I tried to tell my side of the story to anyone, it fell on deaf ears. I was an outcast, branded with an unjust label that clung to me like a shadow. No matter where I went, the classroom, the cafeteria, the corridors, the eyes that met mine were filled with disdain and mistrust. I became a loner. I would keep my head down, attend all my classes, have lunch alone in the cafeteria, and was straight. Go back home. I had no friends, and it felt like everyone pretty much didn't want me there. Throughout all of this, my parents never once called to check up on me. My grandmother would constantly remind me that this was not my fault, and that life would eventually be okay. I graduated high school with good grades, and was looking forward to college where hopefully I would have a better life. It was only when I went away to college that I first experienced what freedom felt like for the first time. No one was watching over my shoulder, and no one was comparing my grades, and no one was trying to compete with me. I met people and formed friendships with like-minded individuals. Despite the emotional, physical scars I have sustained over the years due to my family and peers, I concentrated on putting it all behind me and enjoying this college experience as much as I could. During this time, I discovered my knack for content writing. I had always been someone who wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would be sustainable for a long time. Hence, I decided to ditch my dream. But to earn side money, I decided to start writing as a freelancer. I signed up on various freelancing sites which helped me secure jobs from prominent clients. This is how I slowly started building a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained this side hustle and never asked for a penny from my parents. When I graduated from college, instead of getting a corporate job, I realized I could pursue content writing as a full-time job. I was doing quite well because of the multiple clients and the long-term professional relationships I had with them, which allowed them to rope me in multiple projects of theirs. Having a legitimate freelancing career not only made me financially independent, but also allowed me to travel the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped heal me from my past, even though it was definitely not easy. I saved up as much as I could and took a chance on myself. Over the years, I have seen so much of the world, and yet I have so much of it left to see. The only person who I considered my family throughout all of this was my grandmother, and I absolutely adored her. She was very sad when I moved out, but she understood that I needed to be independent on my own. Despite my hectic schedule, I would make it a point to be there for her whenever I could. I would visit her on the weekends, often sharing meals together or simply sitting on the porch, engrossed in conversations that ranged from childhood tales to more recent happenings. On weekends, I would dedicate entire afternoons to helping her with household chores or accompanying her to the local park for a leisurely walk. Recently, I got done with one of the most important projects of my career. I can't mention the brand, but I was extremely lucky to write blogs and product descriptions for them. After the project was done, I requested the team I worked with to leave me positive reviews on my websites, which they were more than happy to do. So I then took screenshots of some of their reviews to post on my Instagram, as I knew working with this brand was a huge deal. As expected, a lot of other content writers reached out to congratulate me on my professional success and even reposted my story to help spread the word. This is how I started getting messages from strangers who also needed help with their websites. My relatives noticed this as well, and some of them reached out to congratulate me. Eventually, I was contacted by my college's principal. He had reached out to me after seeing that I was doing so well and wanted me to come to college for a seminar to talk to students about building a career as a content writer. I was quite nervous as I don't do well when it comes to public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and agreed when I found myself standing before eager faces, sharing my experiences and insights. I felt like my life had come full circle. I spoke in my speech about the struggles I faced and how I worked hard to sustain myself despite all the hard days. It was honestly a very fulfilling experience to empower others and contribute to the growth of the writers community. Some of my clips started going viral on Facebook groups as people reasoned with it. It felt good to be finally recognized for my hard work. Last week, I was invited to speak at a local news channel. It was a show about the benefits of content writing, and they invited me to share my journey and insights with their viewers. I was a bit nervous, but also excited for the opportunity. During the show, I talked about my experiences, the importance of client reviews, and how a simple appreciation post could open doors to incredible opportunities. The opportunity to reach a broader audience and inspire more individuals in the field was both humbling and exhilarating. When it finally and I shared some of these clips on my Instagram, also as I was proud about being invited to a TV show, this is how my relatives and cousins started finding out how well I was doing in my career. You see, because my parents never talked about me to anyone, they had no idea that I was working with popular brands and getting invited to TV shows. This is how word quickly spread within my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents. It is also because a few days later, I was working on another project and had my phone on silent. When I was done with my work, I checked my phone and to my surprise, there were 6 missed calls from my mom. I was honestly shocked to see her name on my phone, as it had been a long time since she had called me. After all those years of silence, I couldn't fathom why she was calling me. I hesitatingly called her back and she picked up immediately. I asked her if everything was okay, and my mom started to congratulate me. My dad, probably sitting right there with mom, jumped into the conversation also. He started to inquire about my life and well-being, and I answered the questions without much thought. It didn't strike me as unusual until they began to ask how much I was earning these days. I told them that it was none of their business, and my dad replied that we were family, so I shouldn't feel shy telling them my income. I told them that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mom then began to say how hard their life was these days, and my brows furrowed in suspicion. Basically, here is how our conversation pretty much went. We are retired now. We have been wanting to renovate the house for a while now. It's not in the best shape, but we have no savings left. Okay, your success has given us hope. After watching your TV interview today, we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. After all, we are a family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We could really use your help. Are you joking with me? Why are you asking me for money when you haven't even talked to me for years? I don't know. What made you decide to reach out to me? And while I appreciate the congratulations, I'm not going to help you out in any way. Hearing this, my mom started saying how I was being a bitch and that I needed to support them as a family. My dad also added, as my parents, they deserve to be looked after and that this was the least that we could do. I was so pissed at this that I wanted to give them a piece of my mind. I suddenly got an idea that, instead of just arguing with them, I should teach them a lesson for forever, thinking that they could mooch off of me after mistreating me all those years ago. I told my parents that I was willing to help them if and only they agreed to my demands. My dad curiously asked me what it was. Without hesitation, I laid out my demand. If they wanted my help, they had to publicly admit in front of our family and friends that my brother was the mastermind behind the hurtful rumors that had tarnished my reputation. I wanted them to humiliate my brother the same way they had humiliated me in front of everyone by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to take accountability for their actions and acknowledge the pain they have caused. Here, in my impossible conditions, my dad began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mom told me how this was all quite unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without involving others. But I held my ground. This condition was non-negotiable, a prerequisite for any assistance they wanted me to offer them in the future. As the tension escalated, my dad raised his voice, asserting his role as my father, and started to emphasize that it was my duty to help my family in need. My mom, in a last-ditch effort, urged me to do the right thing, and helped them emphasizing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help find irony in this sudden appeal. I reminded them of the past, of the fact that they had kicked me out, and it was my grandmother who had raised me, not them. They started to get more and more agitated, but I told them firmly that if they wanted to establish contact with me and seek my financial assistance from now on, then the truth needed to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother needed to face consequences for his actions. Since this conversation, my parents have been trying incessantly to call me, but I'm ignoring that calls. I'm starting to regret even calling them back that day. I would like to know if I would really be an a-hole if I didn't help my parents at all. Update 1. It's been a whirlwind of a week since I last shared my story, and the support and encouragement I have been receiving from everyone has been overwhelming. It's heartening to know that I'm not alone during this time. I'm glad that everyone agrees I should not engage with my parents or even consider helping them out after what they put me through. The reason I even gave them such condition was because I knew it was pretty much impossible for them to do it. I know they loved my brother too much, and despite the fact that they might have found out by now that it was all his lies, I know they will never put him through what they put me through. Today, my brother sent me a nasty text message after my parents again tried to contact me and I refused to pick up their calls. This is what he wrote. "Hey sis, it's been a long time since I saw you, and I can tell you that every day without you in my life has been great. I heard that mom and dad reached out to you and you gave them a crazy alternate time. They're never going to go through with it. You know that, right? They clearly never loved you, and they will never do anything to hurt me. I admit that I did lie about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time since then. So stop being so selfish and try to move on from the past. You were unmarried and childless anyway, so why don't you want to help them out by paying for their repairs and renovations around the house? Do the right thing and be a better daughter." Seeing the message felt like a stab to my chest. The audacity to dismiss the struggles I had faced and the conditions I had set spoke volumes about his lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my unmarried and childless status added another layer of insensitivity. His insinuate that I should prioritize their needs over my own well-being was not only offensive, but also highlighted how little he thought of me. Fueled by frustration and a strong desire for justice, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and reveal the truth that had been hidden for too long. I sat down to write an email to my parents and close relatives, sharing the painful details of my childhood and the unfair treatment I had endured while growing up at my family house. In the email, I described the strict and oppressive environment I had under my parents' roof and how they treated me compared to my twin brother. The email also delved into the malicious and completely untrue rumor my brother had spread about me in school, which had led to severe consequences and affected my reputation. I wrote how my parents have kicked me out to the curb, and had it not been my grandmother, I might have been dead in the streets by now. Towards the end, I asked everyone to read a message my brother had sent me. I attached a screenshot where he admitted to lying about me. It was a clear confession that I hoped would expose the lies that had persisted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago, and I know that all hell will break loose once my parents and my brother read it. I will update you next regarding how my family reacts to my email. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot of things have happened this month. As you can imagine, my family did erupt after receiving the email. My parents have received criticisms from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of the favoritism and emotional abuse. A lot of the family members reached out to me telling me they had no idea about all of this and apologized to me for not being there for me. My brother and my parents sent me a barrage of text messages that were starting to get more abusive and violent. So I decided to reach out to a lawyer who sent them a notice of cease and desist. It basically warned them to not contact me further if they did. They would have to face dire legal consequences. I guess this must have scared them straight, because they stopped contacting me. My grandmother thinks I've done the right thing by letting everyone know what happened, and supports me 100%. She's the only person who matters to me, so I am glad she has my back. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update. I'm happy to report that everything in my life is going well for now. Professionally, my content writing business has been flourishing. The invitations to speak at seminars, podcasts continue to roll in, solidifying my position as a respected figure in my line of work. I am close to my grandmother as ever. I took a 1-week break from my work recently so I could spend some quality time with her. She is into gardening these days and educating me a lot about various flowers and herbs in her garden. The moments I spent with her, whether sharing meals, engaging in heartfelt conversations, or simply enjoying each other's company, are my favorite and cherished memories. My family has not contact with me after the letter they received from my lawyer. so I am happy that they are staying away from me. Personally, I've started going to therapy, so hopefully I can work on healing myself. I think this will be the last update for now.